So I think teachers should teach something like we can use in our daily life.
I feel like the goal of education thing is just to create change, positive change for other people, and giving knowledge you can use in everyday life. That's what I feel like Mr. David here has done for us. There's the statistic and the numbers aspect about studying, and there's also the emotional aspects, which a lot of teachers fail to balance. Really, they mostly focus on the teaching part, which is there really isn't anything wrong with that, but I feel like it's less intriguing because by balancing those two, you making the knowledge more edible.
Empathy to understand with them what they need and what they want.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm here with three of my students that I've taught in Vietnam in the past. These guys have all been very dedicated towards learning and growing, and I was really lucky to have students such as this. Without further ado, why don't we start with Steve and then go to Lam and Cedric.
Oh, hi, I'm Steve. I wouldn't say I'm dedicated to Mr. David's work, but I'm definitely not dedicated to the concept of studying. But Mr. David's one of those few teachers that makes me feel like there's something worth learning there instead of your everyday common knowledge. But I could definitely see the value and the impact of it there and how it has helped other students as well who are really, really following it. So my respects to I'm really I really admire that because there's not many teacher who actually teaches and actually makes changes in their students' life. And I feel like the goal of education thing is just to create change, positive change for other people, and giving knowledge you can use in everyday life. That's what I feel like Mr. David here has done for us, for our class, and for his students before that. So I'm really grateful for that.
I'm grateful equally for that because the students make up the teacher, right? And you guys provided me with a lot of motivation and passion on your end as well, just from your engagement and from who you guys are. You were all really on board and putting lots of energy into what you're doing. I'm equally as grateful for just the fact that you guys just work so well together and you were such great listeners and made a difference equally towards my teaching, because when you have good students, the teaching just becomes that much easier. Yeah. So thank you. And Lam, why don't you share a little bit about who you are?
I'm Lam. I have been studying with Mr. David for a year. Mr. David is one of the few teachers that actually teaches stuff that benefit our life. He teaches about finance. He also teaches about meditation. And when I meditate, I realize how much I miss and like how fast I was living. I always think about the future. I think like overthinking. Like what should I do? What should I do? But when I meditate, I realize you should enjoy what you're having right now. You should feel and listen to things around you. Also, most teachers just teach stuff how to make a basic sentence in English or something like read a novel and analyze it. But Mr. David is very different. You teach us about how to invest. What is the safest ways to invest without like losing money? But yeah, you're the few people who actually teach us something that can change our life and we will be able to use in the future.
Thank you. I was happy to do it. I learned, I'd say, equally as much from you in regards to just your perspective and your approach to things, because you have like a very philosophical way of looking at things, and it really changed how I saw things in regards to when I was teaching you guys about relationships. I thought it was impressive just how you deal with certain situations and approach things was very unique. Cedric, why don't you go ahead and...
Hello, I'm Cedric, and I'm also have a year with Mr. David last year. I really appreciate what I learned last year.
Thank you for all of that. I appreciate it really a lot. And I would be interested to hear, what do you think needs to happen from the teacher?
When it comes to teaching, I feel like there's two aspects. There's the teaching, and then there's the creating motivation and making connections with the students and all that. And I feel like the second part, like if the teacher makes me want to learn, then they're successful. If I'm intrigued in the subject, in the matter, they're already successful. If they present themselves as somebody you could talk to, or somebody who you could come for insights, like besides academic values, that's already really great. And you don't get that much in teachers, like the knowledge and all of the other things. It usually seems really bland. It's not that I am trying to diminish any value away from the knowledge that's being taught, but it's just not for me. There's the statistic and the numbers aspect about studying, and there's also the emotional aspects, which a lot of teachers fail to balance. Really, they mostly focus on the teaching part, which is, there really isn't anything wrong with that, but I feel like it's less intriguing because by balancing those two, you making the knowledge more edible.
I can totally relate to that. And that's what, as a teacher, you're supposed to do, because you're essentially, like you said, there's the emotional aspect that you have to take into consideration, because if students aren't coming in and if they aren't their best mentally, and if you're not dealing with what's going on the outside, then it's going to come inside the classroom as well. Like if they have something going on at home, or if they have something going on in their life in general, then that takes away a huge aspect of your teaching, because now you have that student that's distracted, or maybe it's going to distract others. And a part of that, which is why I include meditation every day, just to help you and just come in fresh for what we are going to learn that day.
For me, a teacher is someone who built a person. Teaching is one thing, but if the student doesn't have like any motivation to, study, then it would be very difficult. Most teachers right now, they just teach what in the book. So I think teachers should teach something like we can use in our daily life. And motivation need to motivate the student, because if a student just go in class and think of like, yeah, I want this to be over, then they are not ready to learn. If you make your class like interesting and helpful, they would go with a mindset like, I really want to learn, or I want to look forward to the next, period. The characteristic I would say is patient and understanding. You need empathy to understand with them what they need and what they want.
From a student with troubling mentality, most of my friends, they are using, let's say, the counseling services from professionals. They didn't feel any better at all. It's most of the time where they're just being repeated the thoughts that they have again and again, and it doesn't usually work in that sense.
So the thing here is like meditation, we are being like forced to do it, but the teacher, like, they just do it like that is a part of their job. And actually they don't understand the student, how they feeling. They don't understand our feelings, so they just force it, and they actually not improving our mental state, because they think that, yeah, this is my job, so I have to do it. But they never think like, this student is feeling down, I should help him, I should tell him to meditate or suggest or do something.
Yes.
So that's also like a very big thing in education. Teacher don't understand their student. They only teach and not really understanding how they feel.
Yeah, I agree. That's in part why in the start of the year, I taught you guys about meditation, and I was basically trying to give you a full explanation of it so you could sort of process all those emotions when you're meditating. That's why I taught you guys about like positive and negative coping strategies, and I taught you about how the brain works, because it sort of helps bring clarity over why you're doing it in the first place. Because I totally agree. If somebody is just told outright, all right, meditate, close your eyes, it does nothing and it's pointless. You're probably better off not doing it. So the explaining part is essential for someone, in order for someone to actually see the benefits of it.
Well, I think the meditation always on the beginning of the school day. That time, the most of my friends, like, they will have a lot of work to worry about. Like, they have to think about, maybe in the next class they need to prepare for a presentation or do a test, so they cannot focus on the meditation.
It does.
That actually brings up a great point. I think for meditation, I mean, beginning before class time, there are times that you could do more work and all of that. Like, so with meditation starting so early in the day, there is a chance that you would be late for meditation. and you can see how wrong that sounds. And I think one way to really solve it is to put it at the end of the day where all the stress is already built up. Maybe that's the quiet moment, quiet time, because that way anybody who's present at the time could actually use it to the fullest with the potential, given that they're using it. And second of all, they can't use meditation in times as a means to get around and do funky stuff, because God knows I use it. I use that time to do a lot of things. Nice.
No, that's really valuable for me to hear, because it makes a lot of sense after you explained just how you have all that stress going in, and like you're probably late in the morning or whatever it may be, and the value behind meditation sort of just gets thrown out the window as people start focusing on other things, opposed to the end of the day when the day is done and it's like, all right, now let all the stress go. You're mentioning counselors and stuff and how they're ineffective. So what do you think would be effective?
I think what should be done here is the promotion of the school should be promoting about how you should speak your own feelings out. You could they should turn teachers into people you could speak to, because the counselor feels like an outsider, and with an outsider there's not much connection there yet. It doesn't form a connection unless you visit them multiple times, and no one wants to be that guy that can't.
Cedric or Lam, did you do you guys have anything you want to say about this? Like things that you think need to happen in the school community for your mental health to be better?
So I think if you feel like too much stress, you should have like a time for you to meditate, because the point of meditation is to relieve stress. But if you don't have that time, stress is gonna build up, and eventually sometimes it's gonna burst, and you might have like a breakdown, or you just too tired to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggest that, like, if you have like a very bad day already, you should have like a time for you to meditate, like just take off 5 to 10 minutes, and you go to like a room that have teacher in there, and they just tell you how to meditate and just relieve your stress, and then you can go back to class.
When you are suppressing those emotions, and when you're not able to deal with them, and you're just told to like, all right, stick through it, go through the rest of the day, then it's just becoming worse and worse and worse and worse, and it leads to situations that could become dangerous for other people and dangerous for yourself, because who knows, like it may lead to really deep depression, or it may lead to you getting into a fight with someone, whatever it may be.
Well, I have a question about another topic. How do you think about that student using alcohol or drugs? Yeah, because like B says that students may have some stress and they cannot go out talk with anyone. Maybe the most of the people who smoke cigarettes, that they want to split out stress.
Well, obviously it's negative in a lot of ways, because they're using drugs and alcohol to manage their stress instead of understanding it. They're using it as a way of just hiding from whatever emotions they're trying to deal with, instead of confronting them head on. Because in order for someone to improve, they have to become comfortable with their emotions. So things like gaming, I think, yeah, we learned about this, negative coping strategies, things that basically make you feel good for a little bit of time, are useless, because they don't confront the stress. They create more stress, because you'll be smoking, you'll be drinking, you'll be taking drugs or whatever. And when you're on those drugs, or when you're drunk or whatever it may be that helps you relax, in the moment, it's going to make you feel good for that short period of time. But then the next day, your stress is going to be 10 times worse. So then you're going to have to either take more of those drugs, or smoke more cigarettes, or drink more alcohol to help alleviate that pain more, instead of confronting it. Because when you actually confront it, that's when you learn to make peace with it, and you sort of become the best version of yourself. And you've probably heard of the term like love yourself. And a part of that is accepting yourself and accepting your emotions. Right. And then if you're using the drugs also to impress other people, that's putting you down even a worse situation, because now you're using other people to make yourself happy instead of being happy with yourself. So It's a double whammy. So overall, I think it's negative.
But is it something that is like people should be condemned for? Oh no, you're
No, definitely not.
yeah.
It's something that I think people should be sympathized for because, in my opinion, they're suffering. And they're doing that thing, first of all, because they're having some sort of difficulty in their life. So if I found out somebody was doing it, I wouldn't get angry with them. In fact, I'd just listen because that's the one reason why they're probably doing it. No one's listening to them.
As you phrase it, drugs and alcohol and all that, it's an act of running away.
Yeah.
But you definitely know that there are times when if things are at their climax, it's hard to deal. It's impossible to deal with it when there's no way to deal with it except for running away.
I wouldn't say
Well,
so. If you believe that, then yes, but it's not true.
well,
I
it's
agree that they're all negative, but I think it's hard to avoid it. Like in Asia, no, I think the most next generation just see what their parents do and redo it.
Oh,
Like that's
certainly.
way
Yeah, your
too.
environment plays a big part, but you can still make choices, right? Because
Yes.
you have to ask yourself, like at the end of the day, like sure, in your social environment, you're gonna have to deal with people that are gonna be doing these things, but you still have power. And in moderation, like obviously I don't support any drugs, but like when it comes to alcohol, I realize when you grow up, it's more of like a social thing. So in that regard, if you do decide to get involved in it, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like I was in high school at one point too, so I totally understand where you're coming from. But it's all a matter of whether or not you're hiding from something. If you're using it to run away from emotions, then yeah, then don't do it. If you're using it to impress other people, don't do it. Like if you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it because you're the one that's going to have to go home with yourself, right? And you're the one that's going to have to sleep with all these decisions you made. And if you don't feel good about these decisions, then there's no reason why you should put yourself into situations that makes you have to do those decisions in the first place. So if there's people that are drinking all the time and doing drugs and making you feel uncomfortable, don't go to those events. Don't attend those parties. Instead, focus on yourself. Use that time to make yourself a better person. You can use that time to, who knows, pursue your passions, start a business, learn more about investing. And eventually within your life, you're going to meet people similar to that. Like right now, where I am now, there's like a cryptocurrency community. There's a meditation community. There's a yoga community. All these people I can relate to. And I have a lot of friends that do those things that are similar to me. So I feel very comfortable. And I think in high school, it's difficult because you can't, like, you have a limited friend group, but you got to think long term in your future because high school is 4 years and that's just such a small part of your life. I understand it can be difficult to be alone and to make those decisions for yourself, but you got to remember those decisions are going to last your whole life, because if you decide to start smoking, that's not something that's just going to go away. It's one of the most addictive things in the world. And drinking too, that's also very highly addictive.
Because we are still young, so we have make like bad decision. So should, like, what do you think about school implementing counsel that help us to cope with our stress, coping mechanism?
I think is so necessary for people to understand just what to do in the moment. Like when you have that feeling, you need to know that it's there, and you need to know what it is and where it's coming from and why you have it. Like for example, when you have anger or depression or whatever feeling that makes you feel uncomfortable, usually you need to ask yourself why, opposed to looking for a thing that can help the feeling go away. Because that's the reason why the feeling is there in the first place, is because you're not asking yourself why. You're not asking yourself where it comes from, because usually those feelings are associated with decisions that you're making in your life. For example, like, I feel so stressed and angry right now and I don't know why. Well, if you're eating hamburgers and fried food and you're not eating very healthy, it's called stress food for a reason, right? So it could be tied to your diet. Another thing could be anger or loneliness. Like anger in most cases is built up around fear. Like when you're not doing something that you want to do, or when you're not being independent or being your true self, that's where anger comes from. Because when we were living in tribes, we used to live with like around 150 people. And anger is a direct feeling that's associated with abandonment, because if we feel as though we're not accepted in the group, or we feel as though we're not good enough for other people, that's when anger comes up. Because when you're alone as a person, you're more vulnerable to prey. You're more likely to be killed in the wild. And that's sort of trained inside of our brain. So whenever we have that feeling like we're not good enough, our response is to be angry. Like the same as gorillas. Like if they feel as though they're going to get pushed out of the pack, they'll do everything they can to try and stay in the pack. And we're the same in a lot of ways through relationships. Like we're trying to hold on to relationships and trying to hold on to having a community. And if we don't feel as though we have that community, then being alone is a lot more dangerous. So we'll do everything we can to hold on. But if you just sit with those emotions and if you recognize them for what they are, if you just see anger, and if you see loneliness, if you see depression, and you just say, that's just a feeling. It's not something that controls your life. It's just there. It's something that comes and goes. It's temporary. It's not going to be there forever. So you have to see it as something that's just a reaction, something that's just coming up because of how your brain works. But you've learned through meditation just how when you sit with yourself, things pass and you stop overthinking things. And the same applies to feelings. Feelings are like thoughts. They just come up usually as a response to something, and they're not something that's going to stay forever. However, they can stay forever if you give them power. So if you think about something over and over and over, it becomes bigger and bigger. The same applies to your feelings. If you decide to feel a certain way and you decide not to deal with it, then it's just going to grow. Does that help you guys at all in understanding how the whole thing works?
Yeah, I do, but I also am familiar with the concept that, how you said comes and goes, it can disappear, but it could also pop up at any moment. So the concept of relapsing into those feelings is it's not impossible, and it tends to happen a lot. And it makes it worse because once you feel like, oh, you're finally getting somewhere, but then you're back to square one, it just feels like one circle again and again and again. And it's at a certain point, you just feel like you have a leak, and any goodness in you that you manage to pour in just slowly goes out, and you pour more in, it comes out. And then, that there's a hard time for all of that.
But then you also have to take into consideration how you're seeing the process. Because if you look at it, the process, and you look at what you're doing as something negative because you're not improving, you're basically training yourself to give yourself negative feedback. Like, oh, I need to do this again. It's so difficult and annoying. When it's something that you should just accept and something that you need to realize is a part of everyday life. Like every morning, I read out a list. Like I have the list here, actually. I read out the list of things that I want to achieve and how they coordinate with what I want to become. So like, I am my biggest hero. I am able to get over this emotion. I am not an angry person. Whatever you want, you have to reinforce in your mind, because those thoughts are influencing the feeling, and they're influencing how you see them, and they can influence how big they become. So right off the bat, at the start of the day, I'll clear my mind. I won't look at my phone, because the feelings are driven by actions and decisions. You choose how you want to feel. Like if you wake up in the morning and you decide to start scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, you're going to have all sorts of emotions. You're going to feel lonely. You're going to feel like you're comparing yourself to other people. It's just going to make your brain go in overdrive. However, if you're waking up in the morning and you're reading out things that you want to become, and you're reading out your goals, and you're reminding yourself, your perspective's totally changed. Because now all those thoughts in your brain that you've been putting in before are different. So you're able to change the path and the direction that you're choosing in your life. Because what you think you become, and your mind focuses on the things that you start your days with. That's why I thought meditation was important, because it helped sort of just create a clean slate for you guys to be like, okay, whatever happens, happens, and put your mind in a good place so that you could make the best decisions that are for you.
Thanks to you, because you teach us these things. Most teachers won't teach us these things.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the new form of education that needs to happen. It's good to know that you guys were like listening, and I can tell that a lot of you have applied what I taught you. So it makes me feel really thankful and very proud of you guys.
You already made an entire school meditate on a daily basis. So hey, why not?
Yeah. I'll end this here by saying thank you once again for reaching out to me and taking the time to talk with me and share your thoughts. And if you have any more questions or if you have any more issues, you can reach out to me and I'll be there for you.